is NATO the right organization to create a strategy to approach China? And Nathan kind of asks if NATO should invite Asian members to join the alliance.
That's a good question. Well, NATO cannot invite Asian members to join because the North Atlantic Treaty limits it to European countries, which means that Ukraine, Georgia, yes, could join theoretically. And NATO has promised them that they will one day. Sweden, Finland could join. Countries in the Balkans like Bosnia could join, but essentially that would be it, because Article 10 limits the membership to European countries together with the United States and Canada. So NATO could develop partnerships, and certainly that's what the Secretary General is talking about when it comes to Asia Pacific, deepening cooperation. You've heard of the Partnership for Peace and all of the military exercises and training and consultations that take place. The sky's the limit there. It's going to be interesting to see to what degree the Asia Pacific countries really, see that partnering with NATO is going to be useful for them in terms of their own security in the Asia Pacific vis-a-vis the traditional reliance upon the United States and the American Fifth Fleet and the rest. The second aspect to the question, it was this, idea of, can NATO be the sort of crux of a new Asia Pacific sort of security system? Well, I think, it's not so much that it's going to be built around NATO. I think there'll be selective participation by NATO member states, France, Germany, the UK sending ships rather than NATO as such. But I think, NATO wants to show that, some of the things that it's developed for Europe, like partnership mechanisms, the NATO-Russia Council, where NATO was even able to set up a council with an adversary and still, come to agreements on transparency, on exercises, a dialogue. I used to chair the NATO-Russia Council on terrorism, which went brilliantly because, the Russians didn't like terrorists any more than we did. So I think, NATO wants to sort of show that the example of a kind of collective approach to security, even having councils with adversaries, can be something that could work in the Asian Pacific area. So it's not so much that NATO wants to build a security alliance with Asia, it's more that it wants to sort of show its model as something that the Asian countries could potentially emulate as they try to build a more cooperative sort of security system in their own area. But one question, Chris, that has come up is whether NATO should establish a NATO-China Council like the NATO-Russia Council, because, we can't, deal with China forever and never talk to them, right? We've had an adversarial relationship with Russia while still talking to them, signing arms control agreements, having fireside chats in Geneva for years. And so we have to at least have a chat with China, if only so that we understand them better and they understand us better. But I'm not sure if NATO is ready to take that step. For example, I mentioned the very negative perceptions that the military have with each other, and the NATO Supreme Allied Commander has a hotline with the chief of the Russian General Staff, and they meet quite frequently. In Kazakhstan, just to sort of talk about, threat perceptions and what irritates them about each other. But they do talk, and it's a crisis management mechanism. And so NATO, even if it doesn't have a NATO-China Council, could at least establish that kind of hotline sort of mechanism. So that would be my very good question. Really very interesting question. That'd be my answer there.